All right. My name is Jess Cady. I'm a classical composer, and I am starting an organization called Restoring Classical Music, where the goal is to restore classical music. Now, what does that mean? That means that I want to restore greatness in classical music. It's my personal opinion that for the past 100 years, there have been very few who have continued in the Western tradition faithfully. It's been basically the goal of the past 100 years to toss out the traditions of those who came before. And art in general, think about modern art. In classical music that was written in the past couple decades, included, is kind of a byword. It's almost insulting. It's a total mess, and it's my goal to try and do something about it. And so we're going to do something fun today. We're going to look at this video called Music Theory and White Supremacy. This is not a new video. It came out about 5 years ago from a guy named Adam Neely. And we're going to go through it. We're going to take a look and see what the heck they're talking about, and see if music theory is white supremacist. So let's see what the thesis is here. I think the first 6 or 7 minutes of this are probably the most important to get the idea of what he's talking about, what he's getting at.
So if you're online and you see the phrase music theory, try replacing it with the phrase the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians and see if it still makes sense in context.
Real quick, you can see where he's going to go with this, maybe, that he's going to claim that what we learn as music theory is actually this really narrow discipline that is just from Europe in the late 1800s. Now, one qualm I have with that is that Western music is a much longer tradition. You could take it back to the 1300s, to the medieval Gregorian chants is really where actually a lot of harmonic basis comes from that. And so, on that front alone, he's very incorrect. But he's trying to frame it here. So let's see what he says.
Here is an article that claims to explain the genius of Lady Gaga using the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians.
Okay.
The article then goes on to highlight her song Bad Romance's use of the raised leading tone in a minor key, which was very popular in 18th century Europe. Very cool.
The raised leading tone of the minor scale? That's your example of something that is typical of late 18th century Europe. Now, I did a little bit of poking around before this. I found this. This is a madrigal of Palestrina, which, when did he? I pulled up the Wikipedia. You know I'm a real scholar when you pull up the Wikipedia. He lived 1525 to 1594. Okay, this is no late 18th century guy. Okay, this is like 200 years earlier. Am I doing my math? 18th century is the 1700s, 1500s. Yeah, 200 years earlier. Okay, and I'm at the very beginning. Let's see how long it takes to get to a raised leading tone in a minor key. This is literally the first thing that I pulled up to get an example from this time period. There it is. There it was. Did you hear it? Hold on. There. That was it. It had the, if you're in G minor and F sharp. I don't know what key this is in, but it had a raised leading tone to the tonic of the minor key that it's in. I am 16 seconds into the very first madrigal piece that I just thought of to pull up from the mid 1500s. And this guy's trying to shoehorn this to be hyper specific to the late 18th century for some reason. I don't know.
This is a class that you can take all about the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians. And the way that you can tell is by looking at the course catalog, which has a lot of tonal harmony in it, which was very popular in 18th century Europe. This
Tonal harmony is your defining key thing for late 18th century music. Reality check here. All of Western music before 1910, when the Second School of Vienna decided on purpose to throw out all of tonal thinking, all of it before that was tonal music. So he's trying to frame the history of music such that he'll get to this in a minute, but that we've all been like tricked into thinking that we talk about music theory as if it's like the theory of all music ever in the world, but actually it's just this really narrow late 18th century European thing. And his example is that the books, like this one, have a lot of tonal. What did he say? What was his word?
This is a class that you can take all about the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians. And the way that you can tell is by looking at the course catalog, which has a lot of tonal harmony in it.
Tonal harmony. The way you can tell that it's late 18th century is that it has tonal harmony, which you could categorize literally all of Western music before 1910. But he's going to shoehorn it for some reason into the late 18th century to make it seem really narrow for some reason, even though it's literally everything ever before we decided to throw it out.
Which was very popular in 18th century Europe. This is a thread on the electronic music producer deadmau5's subreddit, which asks, does Joel use the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians? Well, no, he doesn't use the same vocabulary.
Let's go back to that post. I want to look at it for a second. So, this is who is saying this is a deleted Reddit user with 14 upvotes. This is his example for how people are so confused about the idea of music theory. And he's asking about a popular electronic musician and if he uses the style of late 18th century Europeans. What is this person? Probably some kid. What is this kid asking? He spells nah like this. This is a young person. What is he asking? He's asking if the guy from deadmau5 took music theory classes and like learned that stuff, and if that helped him. And he's trying to, I'm not gonna be the next deadmau5 anytime soon. I'm lucky to get a job. Just because Joel doesn't use music theory doesn't mean I should follow him. It could work. It could either work, or I would go into the realms of plagiarism. So knowing music theory isn't necessarily a good thing. This guy in this post is even acknowledging that it might not matter if you know the music theory stuff. But this is somehow indicative that everybody's super confused or has been tricked. He literally says this later, that this is like some big conspiracy to trick people in America specifically about the fact that music theory doesn't cover all styles ever, like modern electronic pop music. It doesn't cover that necessarily. But I feel like this kid is probably sensing or has some sense that as you're listening to deadmau5, you're probably going to hear, like in the Lady Gaga song, you're going to hear a leading tone. You're going to hear chord going to chord going to chord that slightly resembles old classical patterns in a small sort of way. Deadmau5 is a Western artist too. There's going to be artifacts of Western music in his music too. But okay, let's see what he says.
Mouse's subreddit, which asks, does Joel use the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians? Well, no, he doesn't use the same vocabulary that Mozart did, and he is very clear in interviews that he uses a different skill set.
Do you self-identify as a tech guy or as a musical artist at this point?
I think I'm more tech than, Mozart or whatever the hell.
What about need help understanding?
Yeah, he's a technology guy, and so his patterns of harmony, like he said, he admitted earlier that's about tonal harmony, and that's what people talk about when they talk about music theory. Tonal harmony pattern after, you could argue it climaxed in the late 18th century, and that Deadmau5 doesn't think that way. So you're supposed to, how he's trying to frame this is that you're supposed to read that Reddit post from a deleted user with 14 upvotes, and you're supposed to conclude that we've been tricked or confused deliberately about the idea of music theory, that we think it's supposed to cover every single style ever in every culture around the world, but it doesn't. It's actually this more narrow thing. He's kind of right. He's basically right about that, but he's wrong that it's like this smoking gun, this like bad thing. It's just the way it is. And who cares? If Deadmau5 doesn't think like Mozart, who cares? Yeah, he thinks differently. So what?
How this progression fits in with the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians.
Okay, let's look at this one. This is on the website that the forum that this is on is called Music Practice and Theory. Are you really going to complain, Adam Neely, that some person is learning a song on the piano and they're asking about how the chords and the melody fit into what this person knows as, or assumes is, music theory, which is kind of the patterns of tonal harmony? Is that not a reasonable question to ask? Like, okay, is he going to Photoshop 18th century?
This progression fits in with the harmonic style.
Yeah. He's going to Photoshop the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians on here. Do you think that this kid who's asking this, if you were to sit him down with this video and be like, hey, you were mistaken, you thought wrongly that you were asking about how this piece that you're learning fits in with the general theory of all music ever, but you're wrong. You've been tricked. You're actually asking if this song that you're learning fits in with yucky 18th century European white people music. Like, what's the point of this? What's the smoking gun here? It makes literally no sense to me. And I looked at the post, and the kid's asking, like, he sees a G sharp in the key of B flat. He sees an F, but there's a B flat chord, or there's an F chord, but there's a B flat in the melody. He's like, how does this fit? And maybe the answer is that it doesn't necessarily fit with 18th century European musical styles. But I mean, a G sharp in B flat, he's probably like playing that chord on the piano, and it's a G sharp, but with the B flat chord, it's probably more like an A flat. It's supposed to be an A flat, or like a flat 7, probably has some function like that. And like he's probably doing something kind of bluesy. Yeah, he says he's doing 12 bar, 16 bar. This is probably a bluesy piece. And so like he's got an F chord, but he's got a B flat in the melody. It's pretty common in blues music to be sitting on the 5 chord and have the the tonic note in the melody and you're hitting on that. It creates a little dissonance. So this is all explainable. It's a reasonable question. But this is supposed to be indicative of some mass confusion. Literally, they think this is a mass white supremacist conspiracy.
Style of 18th century European musicians. How many of you guys know the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians? Did the Beatles know much about the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians?
No. No, they didn't. No. Yeah, okay.
Etc., etc. You get the point. We see this all the time in popular media. We've been trained to see the two of them as
We've been trained.
the same thing.
We've been trained to see the two of them as the same thing. Who's been training us to see that? Like, the whole claim here, and this is what I'm trying to get at with this and why I think this is silly. The whole claim is that we're in the West, we're Westerners, I'm an American, I'm from a European descent, okay? And I speak generally about theories about music. Music theory. How is music constructed? If you were to try and kind of step back and look at music and then say, here's some patterns, here's some structure, that I'm doing that in a Western context because I'm a Westerner. And generally, people in the West are going to do that from a Western context. But he's framing this like we've been tricked. I can't believe that you Westerners have been tricked into thinking about music in a Western way from these old Western people from hundreds of years ago. And they were white. They were white people who taught you how to think like a white person does. Isn't that bad? Like, what's the point? Yeah, I think about music theoretically as, I guess, like white people have. Sue me. Like, what's the big deal? Like, you can't apply this standard to anybody else. Can you imagine this guy making this video about Chinese people, and you're in China, and you're talking generally about music, and you were to happen to talk about how music is generally constructed. Music is constructed, and you talk about the system of music, and you don't specify that it's Chinese music, but you think that that's all music, and that's bad because it's actually just Chinese theory. It's actually just ancient Zhang Dynasty theory, idiot. It's not the theory of all. It's not all music theory. What are you, a Chinese supremacist? Like, that makes no sense. Nobody would ever try and frame this type of discussion about any other type of people than white people. And I think that's very intentional. And it actually speaks to a sort of reverse bias. They think that white people have been on top for too long and we need to take them down a peg. That's really what this is. I'm going to be perfectly honest.
Even though the analytical models, the music theory, that might help in understanding the music of Beethoven might not help in understanding rock music, or country, or R&B, or electronic dance music, or any of the styles of music that you, the person watching this video, are statistically more likely to listen to.
Why does it matter if people are more statistically likely to listen to other types of music? These are just other types of music. Yeah, the stuff you learn in Music Theory 101 doesn't cover R&B music. What the heck? What are you trying to say here? What's the point? It doesn't cover alternative music. You're not going to take music theory classes at college and come away being able to write the next Imagine Dragons song. Now, that could arguably be called pop music, but the next Reliant K song, you know, like, yeah, you you're studying music theory. It's not going to cover, the next My Chemical Romance song because it's something different. It's not the same thing. There's supposed to be some smoking gun here that we glibly talk about music theory as if it's supposed to be the theory of all things, but it's not, because it doesn't cover country music or rap. Like, okay, sure, it doesn't cover those, but most people listen to other types of music that music theory doesn't completely describe. Okay, they're two different things. Whatever. Why is this a concern? This is all to try and push a narrative that this is literally all to push a narrative that America's racist. That's literally what the whole point of this video is. And they're making dumb arguments to do so that have no teeth to them. There's no teeth to this. What is racism or white supremacy? It's the sort of idea that we're going to harm other types of people on purpose because we think we're superior. What the heck does that have to do with this? It has nothing to do with this. Just like there's no logical follow. It does not follow that theory, music theory, being generally descriptive of 18th century music and not of rock music, has anything to do with white supremacy. Are you kidding? It doesn't follow. This has no logical teeth to it at all.
And make part of your life than the music of Beethoven. Let me put it this way. What most people think of as music theory actually does a pretty bad job of describing musical practice in most styles of music. Instead, this has kind of been used as
it's about one style of music, Western classical music. It's not going to describe rock or country. Okay.
As a means of comparing all music from all people across the globe.
All people across the globe? Who in their right mind takes music theory classes in college and then thinks, I am equipped to understand, write, decode all types of music from all over the world? It's like the most self-evident thing ever, if you've actually taken a music theory class, that it's about Bach. The patterns, especially like Music Theory 101, you're studying Bach. I guess that's what he means by like late 18th century, right? It's super obvious if you actually take a music theory class. And he's what did he, let me get his exact words again.
Job of describing musical practice in most styles of music. Instead, this has kind of been used as a means of comparing all music from all people across the globe to the stylistic practice of a select few musicians.
Nope. Nobody goes into reading that book and says, I'm going to compare every other style of music to this particular theory crafting about music. Like, and if they do, it should be plainly obvious that that's not applicable. It's not white supremacists they're not trying to conduct some white supremacist conspiracy to get you to think that This is the point of this video, that music theory, the term music theory, is being co-opted to trick you into thinking that the 18th century style is better or like secretly all-encompassing. You need to be looking for the 18th century patterns and all the other types of music, and like, what if you don't find it there, then it's not good music or something? Like, he doesn't, I don't know, there's not a follow-through on it. It doesn't really follow.
These guys versus, say, I don't know, these guys. So, can you spot the difference between the tonal composers on the left and the tonal composers on the right? That's right. The ones on the left are American. The ones on the right are German. And they clearly wrote the better music, which is why we study them. They clearly have the superior music. They clearly have a superior culture. They are individuals of genius who rise above the degenerate masses and their degenerate music. They are... Part 1.
Are you serious? Okay. Like, number one, pretty much all enjoyers of Western classical music right now probably would love and value Scott Joplin music, Duke Ellington orchestral music, I don't think Gershwin's not black, was he? But like, obviously very influenced by jazz and what you might call black or African sensibilities that work their way into the classical tradition because of the history of America. Because of the history of America, black African influence has made its way into the Western tradition. It's undeniable now. Like, any classical music that's good, that was written after, I don't know, 1900, has jazzy influences in it. Has influences from ultimately a fusion of African and white European music. There's jazzy chords in like John Williams music. And you could very easily, like, I think it'd be totally reasonable in a music theory, let's say in a music theory textbook, to include, kind of as part of the Western canon of music, stuff with kind of bluesy, jazzy harmonies, and kind of add them to the canon. I think that's totally appropriate, and a lot of classical tier music from America has already done that. And so he's creating a boogeyman. The fact that your textbook focuses on Bach means that you think that the Germans are supreme and the blacks are inferior. It's such a wild jump that I can't even believe he's saying it. It's insulting.
The white racial frame of music theory.
Hi, my name is Philip Ewell. I am an associate professor of music theory at Hunter College here in New York City.
Dr. Ewell gave the keynote speech at the annual Society for Music Theory conference.
Our white racial frame believes that the music and music theories of white persons represent the best framework for music theory. It's part of everything that we do, white racial framing in music. All of the materials that we use in our music theory classes, for sure, are so deeply indebted to whiteness.
In his paper...
Okay, a couple things here. We, in the classical tradition, are deeply indebted to the European writers before us. Yes. And they were white. Okay? That's how it went down. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Like, West shocker, Western music came from Western people. like the framing of it, that it's like at the end he used the word whiteness, and what that is it's taking just ordinary European culture, which is what produced classical music, by the way. It was European people doing what they do. You get European people, you put them in a place, you say, have at it, have your lives, have your civilization, and they made classical music as we kind of knew of it forever until 1910 when they decided to throw it out. But like that's just it's this idea that if something came from or kind of generally is associated with white people, that it's bad. And I think that's insulting, number one, as a white person. These are all white people in this video, and they're basically saying the fact that our tradition of music that came from people that looks like us, is bad, just fundamentally. Like as an sort of, it's a very ideological belief. It doesn't really have any grounding in like any sort of kind of equally applicable logic. Like you couldn't apply this to any other, like I said earlier, you couldn't apply this standard to any other group. You would never talk about Chinese music theory this way. There's this fantasy sort of way of looking at things that says the white people stuff, the European stuff, is like by nature insidious and like colonizer, right? It's seeping its way into everything. It's trying to say it's better than everybody else. It's like, I don't know. I think about this stuff much more simply, and I think it's like if you're a Chinese person and you think Chinese music is the best, cool. And none of the people in this video would have a problem with that. If Adam Neely were to meet a Chinese guy and say, which style of music do you think is the best? If he said Chinese music, then he'd be like, cool. And then if you said, which style do you think is the best? He's not going to say classical music. Or if he did, he would have to try to run around in circles to prove that it's not white. Like, it's not just a white people thing. For why? Like, for what reason? It's a very ideological belief that we have to like just because something is kind of purely European, that you gotta throw it out, or you gotta come up with something to replace it that is more universal. I think that's one of the big points of this video, is that the study of music theory as you generally do it like in college, it's specific and it needs to be universal in order to be moral. It's immoral right now because it's specific to a white person's thing. It needs to be generalized to cover the entire globe fairly equally, or else you're a racist. And I think that's just wrong. I think that Western music is great as a thing that came from Europeans, and it's fine to think that. It's not a racial thing. It's a civilizational thing. Different civilizations come up with different things, and civilizations are full of all types of people. Like I don't know. There's this idea that you kind of view everybody from like the 1300s through 1900 that lived in Europe as kind of this big amoral blob that needs to be thought of as bad because it doesn't include Africans. Like, why? It's a different. They came up with different stuff. Okay, like it's fine. We have different things, that we did different things. You don't need to say one's better than the other, but one's this thing and one's that thing, and that's fine. I think maybe this video could have been 30 seconds long and said, hey, by the way, just as a heads up, when you think about music theory, it's not going to cover everything. It's kind of specific to like European Western classical music tradition. Okay, cool. All right, end of the video, done. But no, we're gonna blather on about how there's some white supremacist conspiracy to make you think. I don't. What is it even trying to make you think? That just that we're the best. That white people are the best. I don't know. It's a huge leap.
The white racial frame of music theory, Dr. Ewell says that music theory can be seen as a racial ideology in which the views and ideas of white persons are held to be more significant than the views and ideas of non-whites. Woo, okay.
So, like I said earlier, like you can't do this to any other group than whites, because he admits that other groups have their own music theory, but you would never apply this same standard to them. He thinks this is purely a white problem, and it's insulting.
Racial ideology. That sounds like some critical race theory jargon, and as we've learned recently...
What does this say? Trump bans anti-American diversity training. Training on critical race theory, white privilege, or other training propaganda that teaches or suggests either that 1, the United States is inherently racist or evil country, or 2, that any race or ethnicity is inherently racist or evil. That's exactly what this video is doing. This video is trying to convince you that this video, as we go on, you'll see it is very focused on America. It thinks this is an American problem. So it thinks that the America is inherently bad and racist. And it thinks that, like, the whole undertone of this is that music theory, as you know it, is only the white people thing. That's bad. It's implicitly teaching that because something comes from white people that it's bad. So it's very much doing exactly this critical race theory stuff.
That is un-American, so I don't want to talk about that too much on this channel lest we be accused of un-American activities. So to try and figure out why American music theory is not built around these American composers, we're going to focus on just the music. And we already kind of have done that. We saw how music theory in popular culture can simply just
You're not focusing just on the music.
mean the harmonic style of 18th century European musicians. And there are some musical elements which are unique to that style that are not shared in other styles, which are oddly prioritized.
What? Let me hear that sentence again.
Style of 18th century European musicians. And there are some musical elements which are unique to that style that are not shared in other styles, which are oddly prioritized.
So, other styles of music. For 18th, okay, what do you say? 18th, that's a very confusing sentence. 18th century music has components that other styles don't, but are oddly prioritized. And I think he's getting at just kind of the patterns of tonal harmony. Which, by the way, are incredibly common in that whole list of styles that he listed: rock, hip-hop, jazz, country. They follow a lot of the same patterns that classical musicians did. You can chart out a lot of the chord progressions just as easily. So he's wrong. Those patterns do exist. The artifacts are there. And it's actually really useful to look at those patterns and learn them, because it helps you notice patterns that you hear in those styles, because they're all over the place.
One thing I like to talk about, which because it's so funny, is figured bass.
Figured bass is a system where numbers indicate intervals and chromatic alterations above bass notes. It's kind of like a 17th century shorthand, like chord symbols, a means of getting by on the gig. Musicians would read off of figured bass charts and improvise their parts, which was a practice called basso continuo, or simply continuo.
And as a cellist who's played a lot of continuo with some really good Baroque groups, figured bass is something I live and breathe. I love figured bass. I understand it intimately. When we think about having it in our music theory textbooks, are you kidding me?
Here is a music theory textbook from 1725, Johann Fuchs's Gradus ad Parnassum.
So he explains figured bass basically as a way of describing the structure of the chord that you want in relation to the bass note, with the intervals above the bass note and sharps or flats. That's basically just a notation system for the structure of chords. And the guy's like, "You're going to teach that in books? Are you kidding me?" Like, it's just charting out what chords are. What's the harm in that? Are you not going to learn in music theory classes, even if you're covering all the world's styles in your music theory class? You're not going to learn the structures of chords and what they are in relation to the bass note? Why wouldn't you learn that? It makes perfect sense, and it's really helpful. It is really helpful.
Parnassum, which honestly does not look that much different from a textbook from 2011, Harmony and Voice Leading by Aldwer and Schachter. Nothing has really changed in 300 years, even though music has changed quite a lot.
So, what is his point there? That a tonal harmony textbook has similar teachings on tonal harmony than one from 300 years ago. Like, this is the thing that I don't understand about this whole video. Is like, are the composers from 300 years ago, when they wrote music 300 years ago, did they do it wrong? Were they bad people? Like, what's the point? Like, why can't you learn from music that's 300 years old? I mean, okay. Let's what kind of point is that? Like, what was written 300? It's 2026. I'm curious if that came through. Pieces written in classical. Oh my gosh, I can't type. Classical pieces. Oh, I already searched this earlier. Yeah, classical pieces written in 1726. That's 300 years ago. What do we got? We got Bach partitas, Handel's opera, Vivaldi's. So this is crazy. Like he's trying to say that we shouldn't study stuff that was written 300 years ago because it doesn't directly translate to all these splintered styles in the 20th century.
Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov wrote a harmony textbook, the most famous harmony textbook ever written in Russia, probably. And he said, you know what, music is so crazy these days, I'm not even going to put figured bass in here because it's kind of a waste of time. It's outdated. We don't need it anymore. That was 1884, Adam.
Seriously, check this out. This is what Rimsky-Korsakov, the Flight of the Bumblebee guy, wrote. In most of the existing manuals,
You're supposed to. This video is for people who are unfamiliar with Rimsky-Korsakov, by the way. So you can kind of see the level that they're getting at here.
of harmony, we find rules for reading the now obsolete figured bass, but little or no practical advice for harmonizing melodies or selecting chords. 140 years ago. I mean,
So Rimsky-Korsakov, and he's leaving out all of the context here that Rimsky-Korsakov wrote like in the height of the Romantic period, which was flooded in a very much more chromatic and chaotic system of tonal harmony. They were still practicers of tonal harmony, but they had added so much complexity that it was kind of difficult to chart out chord by chord what they were doing. And so I can see why he might say that. But is the idea that Rimsky-Korsakov didn't study Bach? Is that the idea? Is that really what he's trying to say here? Like, teleport Adam Neely back to Rimsky-Korsakov's day. Is he going to be arguing that when Rimsky-Korsakov studies music that he shouldn't study something old because that's what white people do. He'd be like, what? Like, what are you talking about? It wouldn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense now, by the way.
Might as well be explaining this book or this book or this book. Like, nothing has changed in 140 years.
We don't have
So because there are different styles of music, that there's no use apparently in studying old music. That's basically his point. That you shouldn't need to study old music, like at all. Like, where's the cutoff on this? Are we supposed to only study 20th century music now? Are we supposed to, like, because he listed off like 15 genres earlier, like, can you make a theory, or do you have to make a music theory for each one to study them? Do we even study music anymore? Do we only study music that was made in the last 30 years? Where's the cutoff? Is the cutoff 1910 when we threw out tonal harmony? Is that the cutoff? I don't follow.
have to perpetrate a system which is, once you actually look at it, kind of ridiculous.
Figured basis
It's not a ridiculous system. It's literally just, you look at what the chord is, and you just, based on what the notes are, you write the numbers for what the notes are. It's just kind of a different way of notating. I don't know. You're gonna say sheet music is irrelevant too? Like, when are you gonna? Where's the cutoff here?
is totally useless in understanding any kind of music that isn't Western or tonal.
What? Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Or this book, like, nothing has changed in 140 years.
We don't have to perpetrate a system which is, once you actually look at it, kind of ridiculous.
Figured bass is totally useless in understanding any kind of music that isn't Western or tonal.
Okay, this is super funny, by the way. This isn't useful for understanding music that isn't Western or tonal. What was the book that he just had a second ago?
Using melodies or selecting chords.
This is hilarious.
140 years ago. I mean, might as well be explaining this book or this book or this.
That one. I caught you. 10 seconds later, he's complaining about how these books are not useful for explaining anything that's not Western or tonal. The book is literally called Tonal Harmony. This isn't useful for explaining stuff that's not Western or tonal. Okay, the book is for explaining tonal harmony. The stuff that ended in 1910. It only explains old stuff that's tonal. Yeah, that's what it's for. That's what the book... I have this book. Look, I grabbed it. See? I've got it right here. It's the same book. See? And the really rich part, it's backwards on the camera probably. Oh no, it's not. Is the funny part is that the cover of the book says that it has also included, not the same thing, a different thing, an introduction to 20th century music. So it has tonal harmony, and then it acknowledges it has something else, which is 20th century music, which is not tonal harmony. Funny. The book actually explains the whole point of this video is that there's some grand conspiracy to secretly make you conflate music theory with 18th century Western music. But I looked at the book for a second. It only took me literally in the introduction. Where is it? Hold on a second. To the student. Okay? Like to the student. harmony in Western music. Okay? This the first sentence of this. One thing that distinguishes Western art music from many other kinds of music is its emphasis on harmony. Huh. Go figure. In other words, just about any piece that you perform will involve more than one person playing or singing different notes. It explains what harmony is. In general, music from cultures other than our own European American one is concerned less with harmony than with other aspects of music, complexities of rhythm, or subtleties of melodic variation, for example, might serve as a focal point in a particular musical culture. The book that is one of the ones he's tossing out for being so problematic in this way, literally in the first paragraph, describes in 5-year-old understandable language that the book is specifically talking about European tonal harmony, and it doesn't cover other cultures' music. There was another thing in here I forgot I wanted to talk about. Tonal harmony defined. This is the next page. This is the introduction. This is before chapter 1. The kind of harmony that this book deals with primarily is usually called tonal harmony. This term refers to the harmonic style of music composed during the period from about 1650 to about 1900. Huh. Funny. Oh, this is hilarious. Much of today's popular music is based on tonal harmony. Huh. Just as Bach's music was. That's really funny. Which means that both types have a good deal in common. First, both make use of a tonal center, a pitch class that provides a center of gravity. Second, both types of music make use almost exclusively of major and minor scales. Huh. And it goes on. But the book makes a couple of very obvious and self-evident conclusions. Number one, that the book of tonal harmony and these music theory collections don't cover every style of music, and they don't claim to. This is the big smoking gun of this video, is that everybody's confused because they think they're going to learn music theory, but they're secretly learning this one narrow white people version of music. Like, the book literally says it's about European tonal harmony from 1650 to 1900. Now, this guy even narrowed it to late 18th century, which is just wrong, even according to the book. And you could even argue it goes back to the 1300s. That we know of, that was written down, probably went back further. But yeah, the whole smoking gun of his video is debunked by the cover of the book that he's holding in his hand, which clearly bifurcates the subject of the book with 20th century music. It's his whole point that music theory doesn't cover all these other genres and all these other styles around the world. It's like, yeah, it doesn't claim to. And this other guy, I got to be careful to not call him names because of his clear identity, but like this joke is claiming that it's because of a grand white supremacist conspiracy to do something that's not happening, which is conflating the theory of music generally as though it covers all music in a sort of supreme way. It doesn't. And nobody ever claimed that it did.
totally useless in understanding any kind of music that isn't Western or tonal.
Yeah.
Instead, it's a tool designed to understand the style of music from one kind of people.
I now refer to
Yeah. Europeans. The book says so. This is again, in danger of repeating myself. I'm going to say this again. What did he say?
Instead, it's a tool designed to understand the style of music from one kind of people.
It's a tool to understand the kind of music from one kind of people. The kind of harmony that this book deals with primarily is usually called tonal harmony. The term refers to the harmonic style of music composed during the period from about 1650 to 1900. Western art music, as distinguished with cultures other than our own European American one. It says so in the book that you're complaining about. That's what this book is for. And if you take a music theory class, it's clear, once you finish even Music 301, that you have exactly 0% prep to write Indian music. It's clear. Clear as day. You ask somebody who just finished Music 301, okay, write me a piece of Indian music. Like, what? I can't do that. I don't know a thing about it. Okay? It's fine. Like, you didn't learn about that. That's not what you were learning about. Go take a class on Indian music. Okay, like, what's the big deal?
I now refer to it as yet another method that the white racial frame of music theory can police and enforce whiteness. They'll never say that. What they'll say is, oh, but it's historical and it can help with other things. There's a reason.
It is historical and it can help with other things. And yeah, it's what white people did. Sue me.
That they're going to give for everything, for keeping things the way they are.
That's how it's justified anyway in the course catalog for AP harmonic style of 18th century European musicians. But let's say that you were enrolled in AP Spanish, and the way that you were taught Spanish in this course was by studying 300-year-old Spanish grammar. Now, studying these archaic tenses might be interesting. It's definitely historical. The way that they spoke Spanish back then definitely has influenced the way that Spanish is spoken around the world. And I don't know, if you already know a little bit of Spanish, maybe it might be useful for understanding Don Quixote or whatever, but is it useful? Is it practical for having conversations in Spanish in everyday life? Of course not. You might want to think about, in this entirely hypothetical scenario involving Spanish, why that practicality of having conversations in Spanish with cultures around the world is being sacrificed in the name of 300-year-old European Spanish grammar.
Okay, this is probably the most infuriating segment in this whole video. And I've been talking for almost an hour and we're only, 7.5 minutes in. This is going to be I think this is going to be a little series here. But this does not follow logically. It does not follow. He tries to make this analogy about how you wouldn't learn how to speak Spanish based on how they spoke Spanish 300 years ago. Yeah, it's a different thing. This is just a straight up category error. That if you were to learn Spanish for the purpose of speaking Spanish to somebody right now, yeah, it's a different thing to learn how they did it 300 years ago. But it's a fundamental misunderstanding of kind of learning tools and patterns of music. Especially, like, here's the thing. I'm just going to say this. I want to be in the Western tradition of classical music. I want to learn what they did because it helps me to do more in their footsteps. I want to follow in their footsteps. And I think most people, like, okay, this was my experience. I kind of fell in love with classical music when I was a teenager. I immediately started digesting all the catalog of classical music that I could. I loved it. Yes, Western European classical music. I loved it. And I want to go learn more about that. And so I took college classes on it, and I learned more about it. And now I'm better at it because I learned about Western classical music because I wanted to write in the style of Western classical music. Is that a crime? Am I a white supremacist? Can you just shut up? And by the way, like, the analogy immediately falls apart because you would have to be a complete, dumb, low IQ idiot to even say that if you were going to write rock music or country music, that it would not be helpful to study music that was written 300 years ago. Are you kidding me? Look at these. This is literally just what was written in the 1 year that happens to be exactly 300 years ago. This is how rich of a tradition we have in the West. Just in this 1 year, we got Bach partitas, Bach cantatas, we got Handel, two operas from Handel, we got Vivaldi music, and this is just, we got Couperin, we got, is that right? That seems, I don't, oh, this is, I'm thinking of it, maybe a different Couperin, I don't know, that doesn't seem right, but, okay, let's look a little bit more. What do we got here? Oh, I don't know by these by these names. Hold on. This is a better list. It lists the composer. What do we got? We got all this Bach music. We got I'm sure other people are gonna be like, oh, okay, we got Scarlatti, we got Vivaldi, we got all these operas. And so you get the idea. This guy has the gall to say that studying that music would not be helpful in the same way that studying some old version of Spanish wouldn't help you speak Spanish today. Of course that wouldn't help you today. It's a different, like, the words are different. But the musical forms that those folks used in 1726 are still beautiful. They're still pleasant to the ear. Can you imagine him being like, oh, you want to be a sculptor? You want to make statues? Can you imagine if we taught, like, that you should look at the David statue for inspiration? You'd look at something that's hundreds of years old, done by white people, that you would look at the great statues. Or if you were going to be a painter, that you're going to look at Rembrandt. He was hundreds of years ago, and he was white. You're insulting to my intelligence. This is so dumb. It doesn't follow, and it's completely illogical, and I could go on about it.
The reality of having conversations in Spanish with cultures around the world is being sacrificed in the name of 300-year-old European Spanish grammar.
What they are way more loath to acknowledge is
the grammar of music from 300 years ago is 100% relevant today. It's a completely false analogy.
the race, the whiteness behind it, and how that actually plays into their own thinking about this very history that we're talking about.
You wouldn't apply that standard to anybody else.
When you think about the country, the United States, and you think about how structural race has always...
By the way, they've got like the most beautiful Mozart sonata in C playing in the background. And you know what I bet's funny? I bet, just for the optics of it, that they found a non-white person to play the song as some sort of like kind of undercurrent to this video, which I think that's really funny. I'm sure they thought of that. I am 100% sure that they thought about that on purpose. Let's have a non-white person playing Mozart underneath this as kind of like this sort of mixed metaphor.
Always been. It wouldn't make any sense at all if a musical way, a methodology for how we can envision and teach and experience music were not white racially framed as well in a country that itself is white racially framed. People are loath to admit that any culture with a music, which is every culture, has not only a rich musical tradition, but a rich music theoretical tradition.
People are loathed to admit that any culture which has music, which is any culture, has a rich history, has a rich theory of music. Is that what he said?
Every culture has not only a rich musical tradition, but a rich music theoretical tradition.
Who is loath to admit that other cultures have rich musical traditions? See, this is a complete boogeyman. This is 100% made up. No one thinks this way. I very deeply want Western civilization to continue and to be enhanced. And that the things that were great about Western civilization throughout the past 1,000 years, that they would not just be thrown out. And I think that's what these jokes are trying to do. They're trying to throw out what was great in my history. And it's insulting. Like, the people who wrote music 300 years ago made great music. And it's still great today. And the pieces and components that it's made of are still great. And that has nothing to do with any other culture's music. It doesn't mean any other culture's music is worse or better. But this is the problem, is that anytime a European person or a European coded thing exists, is that it has to be torn down and universalized. Because what we think of as music theory is specifically European, it's bad. And that's just not true. Like, actually, the European tradition of music is really, really, really great. And we should celebrate it more, actually, instead of you, like, glibly tossing the textbooks that would be teaching the next generation the greatness contained in that old European tradition of music. Yes, it is an old European tradition of music, and it's great, and it should continue to be taught today in America because it's great. And it doesn't matter that Indian music is also rich and has its own theory. Of course it does. Of course Chinese music, it has its own rich theory and tradition. I could go, if I wanted to, I could spend years studying Chinese music. In fact, my composition professor at my college that I went to spent much of his life studying Chinese opera. He was so into it. He had in his, we had a class called Music and Culture. And we would study music from very radically different cultures than ours. We did Chinese music, we did music from Trinidad and Tobago, and it was cool. And you immediately go, whoa, this is very different than ours, but it's very cool. But for some reason, and I think we all know why, it's a cheap political reason that progressives want to try and cut down anything that is proudly Western and replace it with everything all at once. That's what they want to replace it with. Like, you can't be you. You have to be part of everything. They can be them. The Japanese can be the Japanese. and nobody's going to tell them they have to dissolve. Can you imagine? Can you imagine going to Japan or China or India and grabbing their book that describes generally how they construct music, and it has artifacts from hundreds of years ago on how they construct music, and they would proudly say, this is our ancient tradition, and telling them, you got to throw that out because it doesn't cover every style in the 20th century. Are you kidding me? That's so dumb and disrespectful and insulting. And I'm going to say it again, I think that the Western classical European tradition is freaking awesome. And I want to keep it going. That's the whole purpose of restoring classical music, is to keep it going and make it better and make it our own. It's going to be, we're going to have our own little flair and our style in the 21st century. And that's cool. It's going to have African influence because that came into America. It's going to have jazz influence. It's going to have, I think the next evolution is it's going to have electronic music influence, because that's been the big thing for the past 20 years. And I think that's going to make its way into the Western tradition, kind of little bits of that. And the influence that comes from, that's the kind of the water that we're swimming in. And I think that's cool. But it's going to be, if it's going to be anything great, it's going to be in the light of, in the footsteps of the greats that came before us, because we're going to look to them, we're going to see what they did, we're going to be awestruck by it over and over for the next, I hope that a textbook teaching musical structures in 1,000 years has figured bass in it, because it's teaching basic structures of Western tonal music, and it's great and it's good. Doesn't mean it's better than some other whatever theory of constructing music that's different, but it's a great one. It's one of many great ways to construct music.
Tradition.
Well then, welcome to this episode of the Basic.
Okay, so now we're gonna kind of go into an example of Indian music, which is funny. Like, yeah. Hey you. Hey. Which way do I point to make it? Hey you. Does this book cover your style of music that you're about to talk about? Oh, no, it doesn't? Oh, okay. Video over. Like, honestly, that's it. Like, what's the big deal? Okay, but I think this is a good point to cut off. I've been talking for over an hour about the first 8.5 minutes of this video, so that's great progress. So that was really fun. I think this is going to be great to look over this and keep going on. I'm having a lot of fun. I hope you are too. Let me know what you think. Thank you. See you next time.